All right, everybody, welcome back to Map Money. We're chatting about technology and data analytics today. We're fortunate to have Silas Garrison, CEO of HS Govtech, a company that is building ecosystems and operating systems to make processes and agencies like the government more efficient. So thank you for joining us today, Silas. And for those of you that are interested in HS Govtech, feel free to check out their website and their ticker symbol at HDSLF. Silas, how are you doing? Did I miss anything? Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, Matt, I appreciate you having me. I would just say that for those who don't know who I am, which probably most of you, I've been in government and technology for all of my career. And so I've been doing this for about 20 years now, building tech for government. And a lot of people don't spend their lives doing that. And so I would definitely say we're at a very interesting time, both from an investment opportunity and just general in the kind of broad economic situation in terms of government is honestly where it's at. But I'll pause there because I know we got some other things to talk about here, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, literally just got done watching Jerome Powell just introduce the rate hike that they just did today for the July meeting. So 75 basis point hike.
75% would be high.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit high, right? So 75 basis point hike. I was wondering if they were going to do 100, but they stuck with 75. That's well above 200 basis points now since the beginning of the year, onwards to 300 basis points. How do you see the state of the economy and the state of the government today and how it relates to the need for technologies?
Well, everything has to become more efficient these days, right? Dwindling resources or everybody just really being more cognizant of the resources they have on hand from companies doing hiring freezes from Meta, aka Facebook, Google, to, just watching how they're actually growing and being cognizant, as Horowitz, one of the the VC firms back in the 2008 crisis, issued a kind of a white paper on the good times are over, the fun ride is over. They reissued that same statement, I think like 3 months ago. And the reason is because people see that on the horizon are some choppy waters, some choppy times. Now, as it relates to working with government, it's not necessarily the same, right? Because government is always and has been over the past couple of years, especially post-COVID, even accelerated modernization, IT modernization, becoming more efficient. And really, that's been the mantra of my entire career. It just so happens that right now, as where we sit, there has truly never been a more kind of active time where the government is putting their money where their mouth is. They are actually actively in process of moving forward with technological innovation at a clip that I have never seen in my 20 years, let alone, even longer than that. So, state of the economy, bleak. And are we headed for some choppy water? Sure. But that likely is not going to really weigh on those who service and provide, technology to government.
Yeah, so I think that's a good summarization. The easy money's kind of dried up, as you're kind of alluding to, but at the end of the day, that's not really going to impact the state of the government and the need for them to continuously spend to update their systems and their processes, and that obviously bodes well for what we're going to talk a little bit later about, which is HS Govtech, right? So where do you see the future overall of technology going? Where are some major efficiencies we can make in both the consumer markets, government agencies, and really where are the large TAMs or total addressable markets that you see over the coming years being, what are the big generational opportunities that you kind of see going forward?
That's a great question, Matt. And it's been interesting, right? The easy money, the big money over the past decade was all in social media, right? There's a lot of pop and fizzles too, but, a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of capital went into social media. A lot has gone into enterprise SaaS, but that's been a consolidated space, over the past few years, with Salesforce buying up Slack, massive. I think it was like a $20 billion acquisition, if I recall correctly. There's been a lot of consolidation, and that consolidation is an eye towards providing all-in product suite. So I think what you're going to start to see is more one-stop shopping as much as possible in a consumer mindset that's going to become very focused on stretching my dollar as far as possible. So you're going to see consolidation where how can I, as a provider, say something like an Amazon, how we can continue to get goods and services to you as fast as possible for it economically as possible. Gas is so high. I mean, that's their biggest, you call it the last mile challenge in terms of, the final mile. But, when you zoom out, you look at software services, it's going to be the same thing. You got all these customers that are now, are we going to put on hold potentially big technological spends, big innovations? And if we are, where are we going to look to maybe augment that with some smaller upgrades, some services? So I think you're going to start to see some larger players buy up and actually integrate smaller service-based players that can provide niche consulting at a lower price point than a big system overhaul. Kind of my 2 cents worth from where we sit today.
Yeah. So what I kind of interpret that as is you're going away from, say, the individual application sort of model to maybe more of like an ecosystem of different technologies that people can work on. So you're talking about, the Microsoft Office 365s where everything's kind of intercorrelated. Salesforce kind of using, the Slack example, they're trying to incorporate, say, the communications route to their, I guess, their web services that they kind of have provided in the past. So people they're looking at Apple and seeing the ecosystem model really work, I guess, and really trying to incorporate that in the business model. Is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Absolutely. People are, especially when you're looking at resources, thinking about it this way. If you are a company that is, it doesn't matter what industry, but, if part of your focus is efficiency and efficiency through less resources, either you've done a hiring freeze, you've done a round of layoffs, part of your answer is technology. And you need technology that comes from a singular source as best as possible. You don't want to manage 4, 5, 6, 7 vendors to kind of get your everyday office work done. You want one-stop shopping. So just like you said with like Microsoft 365, I mean, they've invested a ton to add more features, more integration, more touch points in a singular product suite. And that to me is the way of the future.
Okay, interesting. So moving over into talking about HS Govtech, you guys are mostly focusing on being like an operating system for the government, creating modules that they can then use and pick up. And you were kind of giving me a little bit of a coaching in the background as to how you differ from some of your competitors. But let me just go ahead and ask the question anyway, and you can coach the audience as well. Do you view your company as competitors to other OS companies like Palantir? Snowflake isn't as much as an OS company as, say, Palantir is, but the modules and things that you're creating for the government agencies at HS Govtech, how do you view the competitors, or are you different, similar to companies like Palantir and Snowflake?
Yeah, so Palantir and Snowflake, quite a divergence in terms of their target audiences and their use cases. But really, we focus on the actual day-to-day physical, if you will, activities of regulatory agencies. So the HS and HS GovTech largely stands for health and safety. So the majority of our customers are health departments, those that regulate private industry from, say, food safety, restaurants, to health and safety like air quality, water quality, so swimming pools, hotels, things like that. All are regulated, permitted, inspected, et cetera, by health departments. Now, that's our core customer base at this time and the largest market that we currently serve. But we also have fire departments that utilize our platform, and our use cases continue to expand. And so when you look at those use cases, Palantir doesn't really have the working modules to facilitate that, because what they need is they are interacting with citizens. These agencies are interacting with citizens, and that means they need a online storefront, so to speak. We call it a citizen engagement portal. So they need to interact with their citizens online, facilitate a lot more efficiencies and kind of the paper shuffle that comes with being regulated by a local government entity. Flip that into those agencies need to be able to process information faster, look over, what are the problem spots? If someone has a huge food safety violation, what do you do? What action do you take? Who takes that action? They need to look at a dashboard, see that. And then when they go and take an action, whether it is conduct a virtual inspection like a video call we're on right now, or it is actually go in person and inspect that facility, maybe even shut them down, take a legal action, that information has to then be notated, cataloged, and a part of an official record. Our system is that official record in a nutshell. And so we handle all of that activity, and it's all centered around real human interaction, is the kind of short way I would put it. So our competition is not really big data, so to speak. We produce a lot of big data, but that's not our direct competition.
Okay, no, that's a really good clarification point. And I was kind of looking through your investor presentation, which I encourage anybody that's watching this to go ahead and do. And I was seeing a lot of the application cases that you kind of mentioned too, firehouses and a bunch of different other agencies as well. Where do you see, and there's a really good slide that I want to pull up on the screen, which I will do after the fact. Where do you see the large total addressable markets? And you have a really good slide that kind of shows the smaller markets that you're trying to go after, but then there's some really big ones in there as well. And I'm curious, which ones do you see as the ones you're working in really well right now? And which ones do you want to get into more in the future? Or where do you see a lot of running room for yourself at HS Govtech in the future?
Well, I'll start with the 30,000-foot view, the kind of vision for why I am even here and running HS Govtech. I architected all of our platforms, and I did that actually after spending over a decade at another company building one-off enterprise applications for government. And I'm going to pause there and say, that's the problem with the kind of technological landscape that is offered to government. People think government are slow adopters to technology. They are, generally, that is true. But part of the reason they're also kind of behind the times is because no one's offering them something better. We are the better. We offer we've really changed the paradigm, honestly. We offer a one-stop shop, full product suite that allows government agencies of all types across the kind of regulatory spectrum to adopt a singular platform. What does that mean? Well, think of it this way. Salesforce and other large like CRMs, they don't target one individual niche industry. Salesforce, you could be a plumbing company, you could be a software company, you can use the same CRM platform. We do the same. You could be a health department, one of our smaller addressable markets, but still our largest current customer base. You could be a health department. You could be a code enforcement agency. You could be a building department. You could be a fire department. All of these from an addressable market are what we are tapping into and are aiming to dominate. Right now, the health department is kind of the low-hanging fruit for us. It is our central customer market that is adopting us in kind of droves right now. It's where the highest demand is coming from. And it is where our central focus is going to be over the next couple of years. But we're now moving into fire, which we closed our first deal there last year. We're moving into departments of agriculture, very kind of close sister cousin agencies to health departments. And in the future, we predict that we'll get into other agency types like code enforcement, like building, like you name it. If they issue a permit, if they conduct an inspection and issue an invoice, that's our target market. And we're not going to stop just because, there might be competition there or because we haven't, necessarily adopted that use case. Our addressable market, for us, is in the billions, because these regulatory agencies, they need an all-in interconnected solution and they don't have time, and it's a resource drain to have a one-off customized solution. So that's really, in a nutshell, where we're focused and the long-term vision for us.
That's awesome. And so I definitely saw some of the partners that you guys do work with, a bunch of different agencies and departments across the United States and Canada as well. What other key updates do you want to highlight for the second half of 2022 and obviously going into 2023, since we already are almost in August?
Well, one of the things that I always talk about when I'm going through the slide, our pitch deck, is I like to call attention to, there's a slide in there that shows where we have penetration all across the kind of this North American map with states highlighted where we have penetration. Now, I always call attention to that because it is the most impactful slide in our presentation. And there's one reason why. Government is a follow-on buyer. Once they see a solution proven, they are more likely to continue that adoption pattern. Now, it's always a challenge to a certain extent to get penetration into new geographic territories. And each state, each province is kind of its own little geographic territory, okay? And we have penetration to over 30 states. And so that is where a lot of our growth is going to come from, this kind of continued growth in the markets where we already have penetration. But for us, as we head into Q3 and Q4 in the latter half of this year, we're looking at our sales pipeline really hitting an inflection point. Anybody who's tracked this story and anybody who watches that is an existing holder or familiar with the story, we've talked about our sales pipeline, but really it's about we're culminating in an inflection point of these deals closing, some that may have been slowed down due to COVID or what have you, but we projected over the next 2 quarters that we're going to see deals likely larger than we've ever seen in the company's history. And so for us, it's going to be a very organic, high growth story as we close out this year. To kind of call attention to a couple of things, we just put out a press release like about 2.5, 3 weeks ago that highlighted our sales activities for Q2. So for the months, March through June, and what we saw was 6 million in total deal activity. 6 million, highest in the company's history. And we're anticipating even more so for Q3. So let's stay tuned. But what I would summarize that the remainder of this year is just going to be a good amount of sales activity and likely some larger deals coming through.
And do you see a lot of that, just like you had mentioned, kind of the delay from the pandemic, or do you see that as the other agencies are starting to recognize the usability of the suite that you're providing to these agencies, and other agencies are catching on, saying, how are you guys making and speeding up so quickly? And other parts of, say, a particular district or state government is saying, hey, they're using this over here, HS Govtech, this great suite of products. Why aren't we using it across our entire agencies, across the entire state? Is that more what you're seeing?
All of the above, because government is a follow-on buyer, the more customers that have adopted us, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. I'll put it this way. So when I took over as CEO, I infused my tech into this company, and I took over as CEO in late 2018. Prior to that, it was a stable company, but smaller customer base, older tech. And so I came in, kind of took over, and the rest is history, so to speak. Well, when I took over, we only had about 300 agencies utilizing our platform at that time, or utilizing our solutions, I should say. Today, it's over 800. Okay. So it's scale. Every single customer likely begets another customer. Once you're at 800, agencies utilizing our platform, we're starting to see the spread effect of that, right? It's kind of like not to use a pejorative term, but it's kind of like a virus in a positive way. It spreads naturally. The other thing is the pandemic cooling. It obviously obliterated other market sectors. It soared valuations for Amazon, Apple, and others. But for us, it had a cooling effect on sales closings. Didn't kill anything. It just had a cooling effect for agencies that were totally bombarded and underwater in terms of being able to manage the entire outbreak. So we're starting to see that fully come off, and that coupled with what I just talked about in terms of kind of the spread effect, we're starting to see some really serious uptick in sales closings.
Interesting. So you're reminding me of when I did the analysis of the investor presentation, looking through it. I now reminding myself exactly one of the questions that I was like harping on. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit, the ability for once people get their hands on the suite, they kind of allow it to kind of spread within their organizations and agencies. I was curious if you're tracking it, what your total retention rate is, right? Not like how many customers you're retaining, but more the revenue per customer over time. Is it continuing to grow? Is it over 100%? Or once you acquire a customer, is it, like you mentioned, kind of like a weed, and you're able to kind of charge more subscription just based off the fact that you have more and more people using it within the organizations themselves?
That is the most gratifying part of this. Okay, so at the heart of what we do, and I say this because it is just true. We desire is to help government agencies operate more efficiently. Okay, so that's our end goal and what we're providing. And in doing so, we get really, really close to our customers, and we care very much about their work because we're helping vital services, fire departments, food safety, the list goes on. But these are really important agencies that we serve. And when you're talking about helping them do their work more efficiently, that's meaningful. And then when they turn around and they spend more money with you. So over the last quarter, we saw almost 50% of our deal volume came from existing customers spending more money with us. That that is a significant benchmark. And I'm so proud of our team for really hitting that, because it tells you two things. One, our platform really is rising to the occasion and our service is matching it. So our reputation is intact. Two, it shows you that the need is even deeper than maybe we initially predicted, meaning that they're finding ways to say, yep, let's extend use case here. Let's extend use case there. And we're rising to the occasion each time. And that's really the most just gratifying and exciting thing that we sit on as it stands today.
No, that's a really good place to kind of look at, and it just describes that obviously the product sells itself, and people are wanting to continue to expand using it that have already started to use it. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Silas, is there anything you want to add before we finish up today?
We are heading likely into a recession. Everybody knows that, but government is recession proof. So if you're looking at this solely from the investment angle, government, they don't really miss their bills. And especially if you look at vital services, which is what these agencies that we serve are classified as, the growth's still there. So it's a very weird dichotomy to look at the outside world and how bleak it could be sometimes with the markets, and the internal perspective of talking to these agencies and how excited they are to spend money and move forward with you. From the investment perspective, I feel very bullish and confident, the future for us. From a customer perspective, a technological perspective, there's just never been a better time of kind of convergence post-pandemic, and lessons learned, government being so far behind the times in a lot of angles, that we're just sitting on this precipice of a lot of exciting growth for us, a lot of exciting, meaningful, impactful work that we're able to provide. So yeah, my 2 cents is the future is looking very bright, and I'm excited and very, very grateful to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, Silas Garrison, CEO of HS Govtech, thank you so much for stopping by, talking a little bit about the shape of the economy as well as technology with us today, and hope to have you on in the future for future updates on HS Govtech. Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much.
Cheers, man.